partners of ours that we work with, it's not a one-way street, right? It's not here's the information, here's the metrics, here's the trackers, go and do. It is that collaboration process, and it's really like dating in the beginning.
What's going on, everybody? John Stamper, and excited to be back with Greg Essenmacher, the CEO and founder of GnA, as we kind of launch episode 2 of what's going to be this learning series. And I know that Greg is still kind of putting it together. We started with episode 1, which was why GnA. Loved the conversation, Greg, with you, just kind of on the history, your journey in dentistry, but more importantly, kind of your why behind GnA and the work that you're doing for dental practices, especially in this full arch space. So definitely would advise everybody to go back and listen to that, right? If you've seen Greg, he's hosting podcasts, he's doing all kinds of things in the industry, but a lot of really good nuggets in that first episode to learn more about Greg and learn more about GnA. So this one, Greg,
I'm out there,
is
John, that's for sure. They can find a lot on me.
yeah, they can find a lot out in you. I love it, right? You're building a solid digital footprint, which is near and dear to my heart. So, okay. So this episode, everybody, is implementation is the strategy. So I know, Greg, in the first episode, you talked a lot about it's one thing to talk about, you're going to do this in a practice. It's a whole other thing to implement. And I know that's what you and your team does at GnA, and that's what we're going to get into. And I wanted to start this episode, everybody, by just kind of reading a couple things that individuals that have worked and practices that have worked with Greg have shared about Greg. So here was one that I loved, Greg, which is your help in the last 4 years far surpassed anything I did in the last 20 to grow my business. And that was Dr. E. Another one was he has great vision, which is helpful to have on the team, especially when I get too busy on the day-to-day operations with my group, which probably, Greg, leads to why implementation is so important. Because I think about these practicing, dentists and their groups and all of that and their teams. It's not an easy job. They need help on the implementation side. So just wanted to share that as we kind of got kicked off.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And the implementation, we can do as much as we do, but it really is collaboration with the implementation and the integration together. And I appreciate you lifting that up because that really is partners of ours that we work with. It's not a one-way street, right? It's not here's the information, here's the metrics, here's the trackers, go and do. It is that collaboration process, and it's really like dating in the beginning. It's getting to know the different players, those that are doing the lead calls and converting them, and the treatment coordinators and the doctors, and being able to implement these best practices that we know work with the formulas that we know that work. And I just want to lift that up because when we're talking about implementation, it's not a simple, here's the formula, go and do. It's really that dance, if you will, that back and forth where you have somebody who's leading and somebody who's following, and sometimes you switch roles back and forth. And I think that's critically important to be able to talk to individuals about, and for everyone to be able to understand that it is a partnership as we go forward.
So, Greg, I'm glad that you kind of framed out this episode the way that you did, because as you know so well, we've both been in dentistry for many years. It's one thing, like you shared, to kind of hear of a concept, want to implement a new procedure or something into the practice. It's a whole other thing to implement. And I know one of your goals with this particular video and this conversation is that for those that are learning about GnA, I know that it was important to you and the team that they watch this so that they can get an idea of how you work, why the implementation is so important, the playbook that you've put together, kind of your process. So as they're learning about either, doing more full arch or bringing you in, they kind of get an idea of kind of how it works behind the scenes at GnA. And then of course, obviously they can get a chance to work with you. So I thought that's kind of where we would go, is have you kind of map out that implementation piece and specifically like why this is so important in your business and why you think it's so important for the practices that you work with.
Yeah, I appreciate that. One of the things that we have is behind the scenes, we have a first 90-day launch strategy because we do online training sessions with those that are doing lead call, those that are in the treatment coordinator position, with the doctors, with the dental assistants. We have all that sketched out, but we also go into the clinic monthly in order to be able to reinforce what we're training online weekly, which is recorded, customized to our clients. And the reason why I say we have it sketched out, because once we go in within the first 30 days and I'm analyzing the business and I'm looking at their walk flows, we call them walk flows, not workflows, and we take a look, there may be a greater need, or even within like 30 30 days or at day 45 or week 5 or 6 that we see there's a greater need in one area than the other, and we might shift and adjust. So we might flip week 6 and 7 or 7 and 8. And so that's really where the customization comes in. So behind the scenes, our team is meeting on a weekly basis talking about our clients, as well as what you see client facing for each of the needs based. The other pieces that are critically important is that at times in an ideal world, we would have the person that's ready to take the lead calls and convert them over, and we get them in a regular training cadence. And then we have the treatment coordinator who is the right person in the right seat, and they're able to do their role, and we get them in the training cadence. But we know in reality, that's not always the case. There might not be the person in place, and we might need to help to vet and recruit and interview and then help to hire that individual or reconfigure a compensation program for them, all of these things and pieces. So that's where the flex and adjust behind the scenes happen, whereas client facing through the weekly training and then the weekly strategy sessions are what clients actually see. And so I appreciate you asking about, like, look a little bit behind the curtain of what happens with GnA Consult in addition to what client facing that they see, because that's where the collaboration as well happens. And oftentimes we'll get like the text messages and say, hey, we have this quick need. Is that okay? Yeah, you don't have to wait for like the weekly sessions in order to be able to talk to us. We're human. We field calls, we field
Yeah.
text messages. So yeah, that's a piece of it too.
Yeah, I think it's important because, as you know so well, the whole idea of coaches and consultants in dentistry, like it's been a long tradition and it's kind of had its ebbs and flows, as you know so well, Greg, of a practice bringing somebody in. And like you mentioned, there have been programs in the past that have been cookie cutter. There have been programs in the past where it has at times put a practice on edge because they do have that feeling, like you mentioned, that like they're going to start to work with somebody and then all of a sudden it's like, here's the playbook and this is the way that it's going to be. And as you know so well, and as those that have worked with you and others, that it is about collaboration. There is no perfect answer, especially when you're talking about these specific procedures and the things that are going to happen and the things that they're going to learn. So what is the framework, right? So I think we've established that this collaboration is key. Like they can connect with you or what have you. That doesn't necessarily have to kind of fall into the flow. But let's talk a little bit about the framework, at the very least, this disciplined way that you do want to kind of move them towards full arch so that they can feel like they're getting results. And as you have shared, getting results fairly quickly.
Yeah, right out of the gate, one of the first things that we do, well, we've got a very robust onboarding process where we really get to all the systems, understand what systems are you using, call recording, all of the things, practice management system, access that we need, not only for the teach, coach, and train side, but also on the financial side. So we can help you take a look at peeling off your full arch from the rest of the general dentistry business so we actually see the profitability pieces and be able to make some recommendations in that area as we build and grow and help you to build and grow the full arch side. So that's like foundationally like the nuts and bolts side, which Shar Watson, my director of operations, is masterful at. And that's all very structured and organized. When it comes to the actual training pieces, we get in clinic within first 30 days, as I shared before. But then as far as the cadence of the training, right? The weekly trainings, these are done just as we're doing here as we're recording, right? They're online sessions, they're recorded, and they're specific and customized. Then there's the strategy sessions that happen with leadership and with Shar and myself. And those happen, the very first one that we do is on helping them to create their differentiation. We call it the unique selling proposition. What differentiates you from all the other full arch clinics that are around you, that are advertising around you? How are you going to get your piece of the pie? Because there are things that make you unique, right? There are so many opportunities out there right now. If you haven't noticed that if you had a piece of the pie and it's getting smaller, somebody moved into your backyard to try to take some of that. Or if you're getting into it, there's a reason you got into it. You were attracted because there's opportunity out there. So it's A or B, or it might be another option. That's where we help to be able to brand and identify you. You're not like everybody else, right? Just as you have your own unique thumbprint, we help you identify that through a pretty simple exercise that we guide and walk you through. Then we take that and it becomes a part of everything that we do with you. We share that with the marketing company that you're using, or if you need help finding that marketing company, that's branding and messaging. And then we implement that into your lead call, into your treatment coordinators, everyone in the practice through what we call the single sheet. everybody has that identifying marker because that consistency from digital to every touch point of the patient journey is critically important. We know this because there is a massive study done by a really big consulting agency that most have heard of for the biggest DSO in full arch not that long ago, that same store sales within 5 years, as long as they were open within 5 years, that same day, right? So same day starts variable was a lot 5 years later. But within 7 days, it was negligible. And what they found of those that didn't start, it was what I term a microfracture of trust. It was inconsistency in language. And I'll give you one example, John. What do you call it in your practice? I'm asking everybody who's watching this. Do you call it a CT scan? Do you call it a CBCT? Do you call it digital records? So I encourage all of you, right when you're done listening to this, watch the rest of this, but when you're done, go onto all your digital platforms, your website, your advertisements for Meta, Google, wherever you advertise, and then listen to one or two phone calls for the leads that are coming in. And then listen to your front desk, and then listen to your assistant who's greeting your patients from the reception area and taking them back for your consultation, and then listen to your treatment coordinator. Do they use the exact same terminology for that one slice of the entire process for full arch? John, we're talking about a 20, 30, $60,000 case.
Right.
And if they're saying different things, imagine the confusion of the patient. Now, there's so much information during a consultation that they're trying to digest. They're only going to retain about 20% of it. This is facts and known. And now, if they're not saying yes right then and there, which most do not, and then they're going and talking to another financially interested party in their home, a spouse or whomever the case may be, what are they going to remember to share? They might be all jazzed up and want to move forward, but then they're trying to take that emotion and that high and share it with somebody else who then will say, really? $450 a month for the next 10 years? Do you know what we could do with that money? And suddenly they're shot down. So this is just one example, John, of what we know that we coach and we train and we help them to get more this consistency. It's not the big things generally, John. It's a whole bunch of the little things that we help to work on to help everybody to level up their game. That's where we see the best results. That's why I talk about collaboration, because we know with clients that get the best results, that's what we're doing with them.
I was going to ask those practices that are doing this well and in their communities, their patients are getting this care done, and it really is a win-win for both parties, what it was that they were doing well. But I think you just kind of shared that, right?
I was looking
Yeah,
at your cliff notes, John.
yeah, well, it's yeah, good luck, right? Because I never know where they're going to come from. It's like the conversation is organic, so I love listening and learning. But in all seriousness, it really is implementation. Greg, is that thread between a lot of these little things and these systems that a practice has to do. So here's maybe a better question, which is, those practices that have found a way to do it, is there anything that you have been able to observe as far as like how and or why they have been able to be disciplined and pay attention to the small things? Because as you know, in any profession, it's the details that can really kind of set things to the next level, but it's also the details that really kind of derail people for a lot of different reasons. So what have you seen in the practices that you've worked with that have really been able to pull this implementation through, even more some just like from a culture perspective of how their practice is built?
Foundationally, John, it's because the individuals actually care. And I know that sounds very simplistic,
Yeah.
but I can give you some examples, right? So, one of the very simple things, and it just happened fairly recently, walking down the hallway and there's a gum wrapper sitting on the ground. Do the employees walk by it or do they bend over and pick it up? It's something that's very simple and small. And I can tell you that, is it tolerated by the rest of the staff that somebody walked by and didn't pick it up? Or do they mention it and say, hey, Jenny, did you see that? Yeah. And they pick it up because it's the rest of the team. It cannot be dependent upon a manager, on an owner, on a founder to constantly be doing that, right? To hold accountable. It has to be the whole team, and they have to care about the practice, about the culture, about the atmosphere they're in. I mean, if you think about it, what is it? 25, 30, 35, 40 hours a week that they're with each other and sometimes working in a fairly stressful environment. Because I can tell you in full arch, being in the surgical suite as often as I was in the operatories and surgical suites, like not all those go very well all the time, right?
Right.
And the intensity is elevated, or the lab cases don't come in, or fill in the blank, right? You know, you have a bad month, you're having a bad streak, and do teammates lift each other up? Do they actually care about the performance of others? Or is it, oh, they're really not doing their job, they're really not doing follow through. How come we have so many no-shows today or tomorrow, right? Or is it, hey, we've noticed a lot of no-shows, is there something we can help with? Is it that atmosphere of lifting each other up or pushing each other down? And the other thing that I noticed too, John, and I'm going to go right after the jugular here, and I really don't care if I get pushback on this, a daily huddle. A daily huddle for a check-in for practices, just to see a level plane of where is everybody at today, right? Because there are times when people come in, life happens. The concept of leave your problems at the door when you come to work, yes, don't bring all of your garbage in, but you know what? If your kid is sick, or if something happens, you get in an accident on the way to, if something happens, looking in the whites of everybody's eyes around the room and seeing that, that's critically important to be able to lift somebody up. The other thing is, what is the goal of the practice? And where are we today to that goal? And where's the opportunities? It's so critically important that everybody's on the same page driving toward the same goal. Sales isn't a dirty word. You're selling yourself every single day. You walk into a restaurant and you don't have a reservation and you don't have a name like Phil Jackson and you want the best table. Do you want to be sat in the back by the restroom or do you want that front window table? I'm telling you, if you want that front window table, you're selling yourself to the host, the hostess, the maitre d', or whoever's up at the front. It doesn't matter if you're at the local Applebee's or at the nicest steakhouse in the entire city. That's selling. If you're trying, you're selling yourself constantly. And so sales isn't a dirty word. And so being able to elevate and care for each other in a practice like that, whether it's in a morning huddle or whether it's, the success of the practice, or if it's for somebody who might be struggling and just saying, hey, can I give a little extra here? It's noticeable. And the practices that are more successful are the ones where it's palatable. You can walk in and you feel it. And those are the ones that are more successful because everybody's on board and has that attitude of I can, not what can't I do. And that really makes a big difference.
So I think I know the answer to this, but I am curious. I'm going to ask the whole comment of getting pushback on you talking about the daily huddle. Where does that come from? Why do you feel like, I mean, I heard you say that and like you were
Yeah.
prepping me. I was like, man, he's going to say something like really shocking. And I'm like, the daily huddle? Yeah.
My office manager lives 45 minutes away. Oh, we have staggered shifts. It's
Yeah,
every excuse in the book. And
sure.
if the owner founder is making an excuse, what happens with the team?
Yeah.
They learn to make excuses. And when they're making excuses, the patient experience goes down. And when the patient experience goes down, case acceptance goes down. And when that happens, John, they bring us in. And what are we doing? We are tearing down all of those systems and building them back up from the ground up. So it's a slower process. And that's when it's, hey, Dr. Founder Owner, let's look in the mirror because
Yeah.
that's where work has to happen first and foremost. And that's why we have the discovery process that we do. What's your biggest roadblock? What have you tried so far? And I'm very frank and direct and honest with individuals as I do discovery calls. And I do that because that's experience of what's happened before when it was like, oh, do you want to be my friend? Do you want to be my client? That doesn't work so well because we're so invested in the success of our clients because we get so invested in them. And it's not, we're in a results based business, right?
Right.
Whether it's at GnA Consult or whether it's for you and your practices, like that's so critically important. And also for your patients. Like it would be a disservice if you're going in and just trying to get the money out of your patients and delivering a bad prosthesis and delivering a bad result because they're walking around and they're your walking advertisement. Just like for us, if you pay us money and we come in and you are not successful with how you're being able to move your full arch business forward, and if there isn't an atmosphere of collaboration, we're going to struggle, you're going to struggle, and the results are going to be poor. So it's really that straightforward. So that's why the implementation pieces, it's okay if there's going to be some friction. Friction is okay. Friction is not
Right.
necessarily a bad thing, but if it's non-compliance and it's not going to be a good fit, we know that pretty much now most of the time, right in the beginning phases of discovery. And we talk about that in a very frank way, especially with the emerging groups. What are the expectations and making sure that we vet that out very early on? And it's not to push people away, it's really just to be honest and open and transparent so that we know what the expectations are going in. What can we provide? This is what the scope of work is, and this is how we're successful. And these are the best practices that we know are most successful with those that we work with. And that's really where a winning formula comes from, because then the patients ultimately win. And
Mhm.
your staff ultimately is much more satisfied because the tools that we teach and the formula that we teach, John, it's not just good for like their professional life. Like they can take it into their home life, and we can
Yeah.
talk about the EAZ
Yeah.
formula. It works.
Well,
It
yeah,
really does.
I'd love to do that. And I think if you get anything out of this episode, everybody, it is please pick up the gum wrapper, right? I love that. I love that analogy. I think it's so true. And I think it also sets the stage, like you mentioned, Greg, for anybody that's watching this that wants to work with all of you and really kind of take their practice to the next level. Going into that, I know it's very important to you and your team to set those expectations from the beginning that if you're going to do this, if you're going to add and do more of these procedures in your practice, that you establish that. Okay, so to wrap this episode, I do want to make sure we talk about the EAZ framework and kind of have you get into the details of that because I think it's really important and kind of like the last thing we want to talk about.
Yeah, love it. And thanks for that, right? So it's EAZ. It's a formula that works for converting lead calls into consultations that actually show up. It's something that during consultations to be able to use as well. And so the E stands for empathy, expressing empathy. And John, everybody, empathy is kind of like communication. Everybody believes that it's happening, and most of the time, not so much. And so
Right.
we spend a lot of time on being empathic and the 7 steps to empathic listening. And it doesn't mean they have to like go through the 7 steps, but it's really just things like active listening and giving undivided attention. And it's one of the reasons why those that are handling those lead calls should not be sitting at the front desk as they're, somebody's coming in for a hygiene reappoint and somebody's walking in the door and the phone's ringing and putting somebody on hold. I mean, these are some of the like the 7 deadly sins, as I like to call them, like that you just don't do for empathy. The A in EAZ is acknowledge, right? Acknowledge what the person on the phone has shared with you or the person in front of you has shared with you. If they say something like, you know what, I have an upper plate and it just doesn't fit right and it's really sore and I just don't wear it. Great. So did you want to come in for the free consultation? Did you acknowledge what they just said? Acknowledge what they said. So what I'm hearing you say is that there's a lot of soreness with that plate. So are you still wearing that, right? So answer what they've said. If they ask a question, at least acknowledge. So it's acknowledge what they've said, right? That's so critically important. And the little A's underneath that are acknowledge, answer their question if they actually ask a question. Doesn't mean straight out, right? This is a little bit extra nugget I'll give right here and now. If they say, how much is it? Blurting out 65,000, that you don't have to answer it that way, right? And then ask another question. Those are the little A's to drive the conversation forward. So that's the A in EAZ. And the Z is zeal. I speak with a lot of zeal. It's an old time word if you need to look it up. It just means with
Yeah.
some gumption, with some energy, right? And what we mean by that is many of the times when you're talking to patients, they're prospects, they're not patients until they actually come into your practice. They really talk in a lower tone because they've learned a lot of shame around their oral health.
Right.
And so lifting up the conversation, what we've noticed like over thousands and thousands of calls, when you lift up that conversation, their energy level will lift up right along with you. Don't
Right.
overwhelm them, but that will happen. And
Mhm.
that's to drive the conversation. And then the duality of offering, I have Tuesday at 1 or Wednesday at 11, which ones works better for you, giving them the duality of the opportunity to be able to book that complimentary consultation. Empathy, understanding. So tell me about your current dental condition and driving that conversation all the way forward with the EAZ formula. It works really well. And that's why we've trademarked it. And that's why we know it works over and over. And we teach and coach and train to it and listen to calls and share that call recording. And it's so critically important. It's simple. It's not easy, even though
Right.
it spells out easy in EAZ, John.
I love the Zeal part. I mean, obviously the empathy is a given, but super important. And I think it's interesting that you share that it is like communication. A lot of times we may feel like we're being empathetic in a situation, but life can take us in a lot of different ways, and we're not. And so it's such a great reminder. And then, of course, like you said on the acknowledge side, is I think especially in the speed of a dental practice and all the things going, of taking the time to do that. And, in the case of Zeal, as we kind of close this episode out, Greg, I think that conviction and zeal and all of that and our energy and our enthusiasm, I feel like in any profession, you may start with it. It can wane over time, right? And so even though you're really passionate about serving these patients and helping them, it is a good reminder to kind of build that into the fabric, especially when you talk about this work and doing these larger cases. And let's call it like it is. You mentioned selling, you mentioned that transferring that enthusiasm and or that conviction to these patients that listen, we genuinely want to help you get this care done. And yes, we recognize it's going to be a big procedure. But if you're not confident, as you mentioned, Greg, in the practice and offering this, then why in the world would the patient be? So it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And and you hit the nail on the head with one of your comments there too. And people will get tired and they will notice that, and that's why we listen to the call recordings and share that with the people that we're working with, because they'll often hear themselves and think, "Oh, that was not a good call. Like I know I can do better." Because we're our own worst critics 95% of the time, and so being able to do that is a big value add that we do for all of our clients for sure.
Awesome. Well, Greg, this has been great. And like we wanted to let everybody know, Greg is going to continue this learning series. There are a lot of pieces to Full Arch. There is a lot of work that he's doing with the whole goal, right? I think, if anything, is creating this mindset in your dental practice to be bringing this on. He got into a lot of things in the first episode about just the importance of the team being on board. And Greg, I know you want to get more into that. So if you're watching this on social media or YouTube on the website, be sure to look more into the great work that Greg and his team are doing at GnA. So, Greg, this has been great. I look forward to continuing this learning series. I think most importantly, thanks for what you're doing for the industry. Super important. And I look forward to continuing this thing.
Thanks, John. To be continued.